Review and approval of the minutes until the November meeting, both the 10th and the 16th. Next up is anybody here wishing to make any public comments? I only see applicants in the audience, so we'll move along to that. There are no public hearings scheduled for today. So we'll move on to application reviews. I just want to swap the order a little bit, mainly because the two of them are rather quick, and that way we can have some time spent on the first one. The K&E beverage sign, if you recall, the shape of the sign included the bottle shape. Stacy has come back out and said that they would have to include the square footage of the bottle in the square footage requirements for the sign if they left it that shape. They have since removed that shape, removed the cap on top, and is now just back to the monument sign meeting the square footage. So with that, I think we have brought the sign into compliance with the code, and it's going to be just a monument sign on that. So with that, I would propose that we approve the special use permit for the for the sign for the K&E coverage.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Second one up, we have a new site plan for Dunkin' Donuts. They'll be on the meeting in November. There was one thing I wish to point out. Can I just borrow yours for a second? And I want to bring it to the attention of the board because we'll have a discussion with them at that time. In a letter from the owner of the property, who gives to Conic Donuts the right to submit the application, he goes into it. Notwithstanding above, please be advised that we are not agreeing to anything that pertains to the installation of guide wire at this time, as the promised paperwork and compensation has still not been received. I'm not, we're going to get this resolved with that guide wire before we approve this project.
That's for the widening up the road?
Yeah.
Going into the traffic
To make the
light.
right turn lane there. And we've been on it since Stop and Shop went into business.
Right.
So it's been a number of years. So I bring it just to your attention that I have no intention of forwarding plans to the county until we get that resolved. It still has to go to the ZBA for the variance. I think discussion, but since we kind of recommended moving the cooler to the back to minimize the traffic, we should give it a recommendation that they go with the variance as it is. Okay, that's all I had on those two. CVS, come on up. Since you reminded me of fact sheets, it's a lot.
Do you want us to set up an easel with the plan? Do you want to just look at it on?
Yeah, I want you, I've seen it.
You've seen it, I know,
I
yeah.
want you to
Okay.
go over basically the same presentation that
Okay,
you've done
very
with the other board members on what we have planned here.
Everybody can see it? Okay.
Make myself useful.
No, we don't want to block the camera and things of that sort. So.
Very good.
Do you have well, I have a copy of it. Do you need that one? Because I think we could put that up on the wall so the camera can every once in a while focus in on that for sure.
You want to use yours or you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I got one.
What's the date of that? Is there just one map out there?
The date is 5/6/2013.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I had the right one.
And then there should be one revision. County comments regarding signage. 9/9/13. Right, there you go, yep.
Every once in a while, so people can see it. I know. I understand, but we're trying, that's what. Okay.
All right, well, what we basically have here, and as I said, the chairman's seen it before, property is located on corner 299, North Paltz Corner Road. We're proposing the installation of a single-level CVS pharmacy, and also a, I guess it's a 5 pump gas kiosk associated with the property. Primary entrance is a full intersection on North Paltz Corner Road. There's a right turn in only off of 299. We can go into the size of the building, the parking. I don't know how much detail the board wants to go over with the project. We do show a potential future pad site, not part of this approval, but just the idea of showing this because it shows up on one of the slots on the location sign for it. So that was included on it just to show in concept at least where that would go, but that is not part of the approval we're seeking right now. So. The project's in the B2 zone, primarily with the exception of a small piece down the end that's in the I1 zone. Both the uses are allowed in the zone. And our understanding of the code is that you can have more than one use on the property, that from reading of the code. There are certain variances that we need to apply to. We have a parking and some setbacks, so some minor parking variance there. And we do have a need for a variance for the location of the gas unit. Town of New Paltz has a rather restrictive siting ordinance, I would say, for a location of gas stations in proximity to other ones in the area. And we're non-compliant with that right now based on a location right here, and also the other one on the other side of the freeway also. So that would require a variance from the zoning board. We think that's an area variance, the distance restriction. And what we're here tonight for is to hear the initial reviews of the board, start the secret process on the application, and also get a referral over to the zoning board to start the process with that board also. That's kind of it in a nutshell, but...
Go ahead.
Are there any sort of, is it being built to any sort of ecological standards or kind of amazingly innovative, LEED certified or anything wonderful like that with the building?
No, as far as from a stormwater management standpoint, obviously we will be designing in accordance with the local and state requirements from a stormwater management standpoint. There will be a SWIP, obviously, on the project and so forth. As far as the building itself, it'll be a standard CVS pharmacy building. No specific LEED designation on it. And then, like I said, as far as the overall layout, again, we'll look to minimize as much disturbance as we can.
Well, that answers that. Okay. And are there bike, this is my question I always ask, bike parking on the?
There is,
Yes.
there is,
There is.
right there.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
There is there.
Yeah, we did put it for a bike rack.
We had a preliminary meeting with the county planning department and had gone over an initial site plan with them. They had a few comments that we went back and addressed those comments as best as we could. There has been a traffic study done and submitted on the project also. That was also turned over to county planning and the county DPW. Comments back from there, they were okay with the traffic study. So.
Yep. And then also, in addition to that, based on our meeting with the county, we will be extending the rail trail along the Route 299 entrance right away.
And that, yeah, just show me that, because it goes up.
It would extend right across here. We haven't shown it on the plan because,
Yeah.
like I said, we will be obviously grading that out, but it will run from pretty much the corner down to just before the overpass. And that will be shown on the proposed site plan documents when we do come in.
So the sidewalk is on the other side of the road.
That is correct.
Right, that looks like it. But the bike trail is also along North Putt, right?
Right.
And we do have the sidewalk.
We have the sidewalk, I'm just saying the bike trail is there, so, it's, we'd like to continue that on that. That's one of the things that I'd like to see on that.
So the rail trail will be below, not on the shoulder of 299, it'll be down in the embankment?
No, we're actually going to be filling in this area. We've already met with the county on that. We've already met with the state as well. This area, because right now the property sits a good,
10, 12 feet.
12 feet down. That will be filled up.
To what?
Probably be within about 2 feet of Route 299 grade.
What's down there now? Nothing?
Nothing. It's kind of overgrown in this
Yeah, I know,
area.
but there
single
are
family
wetlands
house.
down there?
No.
You're not really showing anything on this map. I mean,
That is
that's
correct.
a little
Yeah, we haven't done like the full design document and so forth. Again, this is just the initial plan submittal. Again, when we do come in for site plan, it'll be fully engineered set of plans, which will show the grading and the stormwater management and everything.
Okay.
So when the ZBA grants variances, do we kind of weigh in on that? How does that?
If we're referring something to the ZBA, we can refer it to them with a recommendation, grant it, or a recommendation, or no recommendation whatsoever, or anything else in between. And they listen. So, but we can give our 2 cents in on that. The one kind of question I had is, I know this doesn't quite make the district on water and sewer, but damn, how much closer do we have to be?
You're really close. You got a manhole in the intersection there.
That's, I just, to the extent that we do have a system right outside the lot line, why aren't we looking at it? And is it because the district lines don't go that far, or?
To be able to get into the village would be approving this. Be able to get that flow in. If it was on the other side if it were on South Putt, there's allocation there. It's on North Putt.
So on south side of the road, there's allocation for us to use the sewage.
50,000 gallons.
Right,
Yeah.
but on the north side, there isn't?
That's the way the agreement was written.
That was an issue we looked into quite intensely, as a matter of fact, yes. It's, we're not, the site is self-sufficient for water and sewer, but certainly the preference would be to be on municipal system if it could be arranged, but it seems after looking into that issue pretty intensely, there's a blockage, no pun intended, but there's a blockage about the sewer system, so.
I had a couple of questions about, you're going from a 45 mile an hour road, which right now is a right turn lane onto North Putt Corner, and you're taking a turn lane off of there for 80 feet, about 12 feet wide, and you're going to cross over a rail trail, dropping down, you say now 2 feet, which, wasn't clear when I first looked at it. This looks like 10, 12 feet, but even 2 feet. And then you're coming into a parking lot with a stop bar with traffic's going to go across there for so I'm imagining you have cars making a quick right-hand turn, and you have a stop bar and a rail trail that these cars are going to cross. That seems like a very dangerous place to me in two aspects.
Well, first of all, I just clarify the stop being what, because we are controlling traffic going if north-south direction on the site. So that is stop controlled for anybody coming in, so it'll be a through.
Wait, what's controlling it? What's
So
controlling
with
it?
stop, just so I'm clear. So we do have stop control going in the
You're
north-south
stopping
direction.
somebody here, and
Yep.
they're going to be expecting somebody going 40 miles an hour to be popping down into the parking lot
Well,
here.
I mean, also, I mean, look at it, I mean, do you normally hit a driveway going 40 miles an hour?
But
you know, going to a
I would
shopping
think
center?
that you would need some kind of signage or speed bumps or something. I mean, that, to me, that just, and right in here, you're saying you're going to cross a rail trail. Like, what's going to clue somebody that somebody on a bicycle might be coming along at 25 miles an hour on the right-hand side of them before they, and they're going to turn across that person.
When we do come in with the full design plans, there will be a crosswalk in there, there will be appropriate signage out the driveway. Our traffic engineer has already looked at the distance from as soon as you come over the bridge to pretty much that decel lane, if you want to call it that, to
I
come
don't
into the
call it
driveway.
that, I call it a right turn lane.
Okay, well, it'll be a decel lane, and again, you know, it's like anything else, you do have driveways, I mean, you know, you do have a driveway coming off of Route 299 into the Sunoco, and I don't see anybody hitting that at 40 miles an hour, so, I mean, obviously, there is a control when people are hitting a, obviously, normal driving characteristics, when you are hitting a driveway, you know, unless it's a high-speed off-ramp, but that won't be the case here.
Okay,
And even the rail trail designs themselves too, that the DOT typically approves, there's signage on the bike side of that rail trail of that too. And typically you get a constriction that comes down that forces people to slow down so they don't just, you know, blow through the driveway, you know, on the bike too. So.
another thing I wanted to point out to you, you have on North Putt Corners from your driveway there, you have sight distance plus or minus 500 feet. Well, the traffic on the other side of 299 is about 10, 12 feet lower than 299. So when you come up there, there's a blind spot right there about 30 feet from the intersection. So you don't really have 500 feet. So I don't know what's required, but you don't have 500 feet.
We'll look into that further. for you,
I
but
drive it every
we did
day, I
have
can
our
tell you.
traffic.
It goes up really at
It
the
goes
end,
up
right?
really fast right by the corner there.
Yeah, we'll look at that closer for you, but we did have our traffic engineer take a look at that for us.
That's all I have on the initial look at it.
Dave, is there anything?
The engineer that reviewed this has been sick, but I did want to give a draft, I'll call it a draft, copy. I haven't reviewed it.
Fresh off the press, ain't?
Yeah. And it just recognizes that it's kind of a conceptual plan at this point. It points out the 4 variances that are needed. It lists some of the site plan requirements that aren't shown yet. Trees, for example. You see some tree lines, but it looks like it's pretty wooded. There may be some trees that we can save in there. Looks like there's some pretty good sized trees. There's also some extra pavement that you're going to need to justify. It's much wider than the standards. If it is necessary for turning movements or whatever, that's fine, but, you know, it's really wide in there. It looks like just paving to make it black. So take a look at that.
There's one back here on the other side of the thruway.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah.
Just a few minor things to the EAF that need to be considered. Just recognizes what we're going to see as far as the SWIP and everything else.
Okay.
Lighting plans. This fueling station has a canopy.
Yes.
Be very careful on how you light that. It's often typical that they're way too bright, and we have some standards on that.
Yep.
Be sure and shield the fixtures too, so they're not shining in anyone's face. Screening along that side will be important because you're right there at the throughway.
Okay.
And the building, that eastern side of the building is, you just have to do something with that. It looks, the mass of that building, and it's kind of uninterrupted by anything, just a long block. So I know there's ways to be able to deal with that. That's kind of the gateway of coming into town, so that's good.
Yeah, we're gonna, like I said, obviously for the submittal here, obviously when we do come in, we will have a full set of engineered plans. Landscaping along that area, we've already spoken about as far as, the screening along the back, also really taking into account the sight lines as you come in, because it is anticipated that this island here, especially between the service station and the pharmacy, will be, will have some, trees on it, some sort of screening on that as well. So really, when you look at the sight line, anybody coming over, we'll kind of minimize that distance that they really have into the site.
Should be aware that the parking code in New Paltz requires an 8% within the parking area. So that really doesn't count all of the outside of the curb area. You really need to do some landscaping inside the parking area.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things on the parking is do an accurate count, because we'd like to see some of the breakup of the long treads. I have something in between them.
An island, a landscaped island or something?
Need to be sufficient width too, that the roots will be able to live through it.
What is the proposed height of the building? You have a
It's a single-story building.
Single-story, right.
Single-story, yeah.
it's less than 30 feet.
I will tell you now, as far as your sign variance,
Overall height is 20 feet.
you're at 300% of the requirement, of the allowed, or over that, of it. So it's not even close, so. And the monument sign too.
Yep.
Can't speak for the ZBA, but you definitely won't get a recommendation out of this board for anything of that magnitude.
Yeah, what we're thinking of is, especially on the monument sign, because I know you brought that up, obviously because we are looking at possibly down the road, even though it's not part of this application, is, having the monument sign large enough that if we had to get another ID on it for another use on the property, that was the reasoning for that, to make sure we have enough room for another panel.
Oh, yeah, but 5 feet and 15 feet are significantly different. So this will have to go before multiple agencies. Is it far enough along that we should declare it lead agency status?
You, I think, have a plan that's adequate for that purpose. There is one question I had regarding the relationship between Stop and Shop and this gas station use. There is provision in the code that requires a special permit when an accessory use is not located on the same lot as the principal use. On the other hand, this is seems to be a gas station, but there's going to be some, I think basically we need to figure out whether it requires the accessory permit or not. So that may be taken care of by a referral to the building inspector for determination. And it's conceivable it could have some traffic consequences that should be analyzed in the traffic study. Because my understanding of how Stop and Shop operates is it gives discounts to people who buy gas at their facility, and that means you'll have traffic coming from the plaza to the gas station. Some unusual basis. which just needs to be accounted for. Turns out left turn movement.
Is this going to be just gas or diesel also?
I'm sorry, what?
Will it be diesel and gas? Or?
I think right now it's just the gas.
It's just gas.
Really, I see some other stations that have diesel and you wind up with big trucks pulling in there.
Sure,
and Landscape guys with trailers and, you know, so just for the circulation pattern,
Right.
you know, you're through a parking lot here instead of, you know, a single use
Yep.
site, you know?
Yeah, no, right now, we do have, you know, we do have accommodations for the, for actually 2 tanks in the ground, so it'll be, you know, regular and premium.
Do you plan to have anything for electric recharge of cars?
At this point, no. But again, it could be something we can look into. See if that's something that they're offering or, you know, potential, you know, plan for it now, have a retrofit later on down the road.
There's a question about the building profile. When you're driving 299, what's the relative height of the building, of the roof of the building?
Traveling northbound coming across the bridge over.
If you're traveling westbound,
Oh, westbound,
going across the bridge?
yep. The high point of the building itself, which is, the front is at 20 feet at the height. As you're coming this way across, it's 18 feet.
So you'll
In the
see a
back.
building that's 18 feet high? appears
That
to be
is
18
correct.
feet high?
Yep. And it will be, like I said, approximately right now with the grade differential, like I said, we haven't done any final grading. It'll probably be, you know, probably about 2 feet lower than what 299 is right now, is what we're looking at.
Before, in the
finished
past, has had concerns about roof structures that were visible along 299, for instance, that Stop and Shop.
A screening of equipment.
Screen.
You screen group.
So a profile showing the road would be helpful, I think, if it's not on there already. And I didn't see a copy of the traffic study. Did you submit to us?
We didn't get that.
We have that, right?
Yeah, you should have.
We have a copy of it. We haven't started work on it because I haven't made an application. So I can't put you guys on it yet.
We have it.
Now, is the roof going to have HVAC equipment?
Yes, sir.
And how big are those? I mean, that's in addition to the 18 feet, right?
Yeah. Well, what it is the building itself, it's kind of a cutaway. It does have a, probably a 3 to 3.5 foot
Parapet,
parapet around it. So again, the units will be sitting behind that, but again, we can look at that a little bit closer for
So
you.
this will be a flat roof?
It'll be a
like,
flat roof on the back,
TPO
yes.
or rubber or something like that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, because really what you're looking at here is this flat line here is really the top of the parapet.
Okay, okay.
But you can see here. kinda how
So
the
you might
parapet
be
cuts in.
5 more feet for an air handler or something, or
True, yes.
whatever, I don't know what you'll use, but,
Yeah, exactly. We'd have to look at that. Yeah, because I mean, when you look, the building's over 13,000 square feet, so yeah, you probably maybe have a total of 4 units, approximately what we see for a building this size.
are you planning on a generator?
At this point, no.
Okay.
May need one for the gas facility.
I'm sorry, what?
I believe you may need one at some point for the gas facility. The state is
There's
considering,
talk of that.
so consider it possible. The board in the past couple of years, well, 5 or 6 years, has considered various buildings like Mobile, Hampton Inn, the bank, across from Stop and Shop, as well as Stop and Shop in terms of roof structure and appearance. Generally, my recollection is there has been disfavor of flat roofs, preference for peak roofs to reflect the character of the architectural design of the community, and I'm not sure whether you want to encourage the applicant to consider such a thing.
Well, I think it has to be considered in lieu, well, I shouldn't say in lieu of, but the brick facade coming over the throughway coming into town, that whole line up there, we have questions about that, so incorporations of that to pick up some of the historic issues about town would be beneficial on that.
This is one of the first things you see coming into town, and absolutely nothing about it has anything to do with our town. It's just another thing you see in every town. This is a town totally dependent on tourism and leaf peepers, and it's just yet another gas station and pharmacy in a town that already has 7 gas stations and 3 pharmacies.
But who's counting?
This would be the best one.
Oh, excited. Well, I get these.
I'm sorry, did you say that the building floor elevation is going to be 2 feet lower than 299?
We were looking to bring that up, raise that up in that area. That's, again, like I said, we haven't looked at any final grading plans, but, you know, the goal is to look to raise that area. But like I said, you know, right now, we're plus or minus 2 feet, or again, it might end up being a little bit lower once we start looking at the grades. Because especially in that area where you kind of see where the building is, where we're just on the other side of kind of like a mounded area. In that area, you can see probably closer to where the house is, you kind of have like a ridge line running through the site, and then it kind of drops back towards the thruway, and then also back towards North Putt. So like I said, we're going to just be moving over. Obviously, it'll be an import site as well. We start looking at the grading and the fill.
Yeah, we really need to know how much import.
Yep.
Because that could be a real traffic issue there on that intersection, that corner in particular.
Sure. But, and again, you know, even when we met with the county and even with we did meet with the DOT on site, and again, the DOT has no problems, you know, granted us whatever easements we need to raise that in there as well, between our right-of-way and the street or the highway.
Are there any existing or proposed utilities in there that might be affected by the amount of fill on top?
No, sir. A lot of it is, will obviously be removed as far as what you have for the house. The house did have some overhead lines coming in, which have since been disconnected. Pretty much everything we'll be bringing in for the building would be underground.
There's no drainage structures or traffic signal facilities that would be affected by the amount of fill?
At this point, no, sir. And again, you know, once we start doing our final plans, we will be taking a lot of that into consideration.
Do you plan to have separate signage for the gas station and some kind of logo, or?
Yes, we're looking to have at the entrance, the right-hand entrance coming off, there will be a freestanding sign on the corner.
What's the height of that?
The height of that was, it's safe, they're going to be 15 feet. It would just be a stop and shop with the price underneath it.
Okay.
And then you can see kind of how their canopy is set up with the signage as well.
Okay.
Stop and Shop is a tenant or a sort of, are they a pure tenant that could be replaced by someone else, or?
It's a tenant, you know, it's a land tenant at this point. In theory, could it be replaced by somebody else? It's a long-term lease.
What term? Just like curiosity.
More than 5 years.
So why would this be the best gas station in town? I really want to know. I really need to know here.
Okay. All right, I think there's a number of issues, and I get a blank every time I have an idea and someone starts, I lose it right away. So,
Gotta write it down.
I know. It does slope up here, right? Where the land starts sloping up here.
You can kind of see how it is.
So one of the things that possibly is that you could use some of that and leveling it off, but you guys know how to move that around better than I do. Off the top of my head, that's all. It's just, you know, if it's local, it's easier. That's what I think. So if you are, that's one of the information we'll need on that one on it. But I think we could propose to be lead agency since they need permits from everybody for this. And get that out of the way. I would like to discuss with you about water and sewer on that one little site that sits there, and why is it unique to that, and what contract, what agreement do we have in place with the village that does that?
Where will you fill your tanks from?
I'm sorry.
Where will the tanks fill from? This
Oh, the tanks, yeah, this little pull-off area in here. What'll happen is the truck will come down, he'll pull into that area. They always discharge to the right of the tanks. So the fills are approximately in this area here, where you see the brake.
Yeah.
So the fills, so what'll happen is the truck will pull in, he'll be sitting in this area, and then he'll be discharging into the fills to the right. Pretty much everything is done by gravity, so when they do come to fill up the truck, come to fill up the tanks, the truck is not idling. To shut off, there's no external pumps on the tank system again. It's all done by gravity.
Sure.
What's the
Are
size
you?
of the tanks?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the size of the tanks?
The underground tanks? I believe they're probably 10,000 gallons.
Each?
No, actually, the larger one is 10,000. The smaller one's probably in the range of 8,000 to 9,000 gallons, which is pretty much typical what you're seeing nowadays. And then the tanker truck itself is typically a 10,000 gallon tanker.
And these will be double-line tanks, or?
Yes, sir.
No.
Yeah, they'll be monitored, leak detection system on them, and then double
Cathodic.
wall fiberglass.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's fiberglass.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hours of operation? For both, either. What are they looking at here?
I think when we first met, we said it wouldn't be an issue with the ordinance requirements. Again, as far as exact, I
Oh, yeah, I know.
provide that to you.
No,
I
but-
can provide that to you.
Well, again, the CVS does have 24-hour pharmacies, and just didn't know. One of the things is to find out what that would be.
Absolutely.
Are you anticipating any pedestrian traffic from the gas station to the drugstore, or vice versa? Or they'll be pretty much separate?
We would anticipate it to be separate because, like I said, anybody going in for the gas, really when you look at the parking over in that area by the gas station would mostly be for the attendant or whoever's working over there. So we would anticipate, especially when you see use such as this type, that somebody would come in for their gas, fill up, and then probably drive over and park at the CVS, because especially when you look at where the entrance is of the CVS building at the corner, obviously it'll be easier to come around, park in the CVS slot.
Minor note, who's going to operate the vending? Is that Stop and Shop or
The vending that's out by the
by
canopy,
parking, right next to the parking space?
that will be Stop and Shop.
What do they anticipate vending?
It could be anything from, beverages, more than likely it's beverages like water, soda, and stuff like
Maybe
that.
like
Just
a
what they have in there. Yeah, it'll be a vending machine.
Would it make any sense to have that be one way around this thing here or something?
As far as the traffic around the canopy facility.
Yeah, it just seems a little odd, that it feels odd. I'm not sure how I would feel driving it, it's just sort of narrow over here.
Yeah, we can sure
You
look
got
at that for
like
you from an operation
18,
standpoint.
yeah, well, it's 18, so.
Keep in mind that the tanks are below grade. So
Oh, no, I was thinking more of, because you got a stop sign coming out here, and you got a stop sign coming this way, and these people here, even if you raise the grade up to 2 feet lower than the road, they're looking backing up for anybody coming off that.
Coming in,
Okay,
whether they can
okay,
see
so-
somebody.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so we're saying
Yeah.
limit this to a one-way flow.
Yeah, come in, go out,
But, yeah, that's a good point, visual, looking back on that, 299.
And where are you getting utilities from? Off of North Putnam? Underground to your transformer? Is that?
Well, we do have off of North Putt, and I believe also the house used to be serviced. Electricity was coming off of 299 because there are a series of poles along 299 that we probably pull our underground electric from.
What happens to, right now there's a guardrail all the way to the corner. What happens with that? Are you putting a brake in it and turning through it, or is it being removed? Or
There will be a break in it, and then obviously we did talk about maybe even continuing it down around the corner.
And that
as
belongs
well,
to
but
DOT, right?
Yes, and again, we did meet with DOT out there at the site and had no problem with, putting a break in it for the driveway, and then obviously replacing where we need to.
And what are you going to do with snow removal?
Snow removal? Well, again, when you look at the property as it is, because like I said, don't forget this pad is not here. We definitely do have room, further to the east of the property where we can throw snow.
East?
I'm sorry,
North.
if I kept going it up, again, I'm always used to North being at the top. We have this whole area over here we could take advantage of. So, and then again, even down in here, we still have some along the sides we could dump.
And then are you going to have any kind of pre-treatment of the stormwater? Or what are you gonna do?
Yes, there will be a device, especially by the gas station. There will be a water quality device for that. And then as far as the CVS itself,
Like just
basins.
Screen separator type thing?
water separator.
Or not a vortex, or, not a powered one, like just a separator?
Yeah.
Screen.
Yeah.
Oil rise up, gets caught in the screen. Okay.
Yeah, we will, just on that snow issue, we do have kind of a written policy about snow piles. And when it gets to a certain height, you gotta, if you're piling up the parking lot, a certain height, you have to cart it off.
Yep.
5 feet, I think.
5 feet, yeah. So,
And again, we do have plenty
You
of
still
room
have
over
that
here to the
area.
north where, if we need to get it out, we could definitely get it out.
okay, I think for conceptual on it, we'll go, at least from our point of view, I think we could have enough information to declare lead agency. That's a 30-day process. We'll get with the building inspector, request on the accessory use, clarification on that. Forward the variance requests to the ZBA. They will probably wait for us to do the seeker determination and let us handle that end of it. So, but yeah, I don't think there's anything. I'm trying to think. Let's see. The sign and another blank. What was the other one?
The gas station.
The gas station.
Proximity.
Proximity
Yeah.
to the gas
Within
station.
2,000 feet.
We will probably, I'm going to get in reverse on that, but an indication from them, because obviously it's contingent on your plan. I mean, the site plan changes drastically if that doesn't fly on it. So I'll talk with Linda and see how we, Linda Donovan's the chair of the ZBA, and how we best proceed with that to do it efficiently, I'll put it that way.
How we've done it in other communities would be, this board would take the steps to become lead agency, do a coordinated review. We'd go to the zoning board and start the process with the zoning board, so we at least get an initial indication of where they're going.
Right.
Maybe even to the point of saying, okay, we're good with it, but we can't do anything with it until you finish seeker, come back to this board, finish seeker, and then go back for their official determination.
Yep.
But, so it's a little bit of bouncing back and forth, but I find
Right.
it's the best way to work that. So.
Okay, but that's what we'll do here. I'll talk with,
I'd be really interested in having any sort of meeting or discussion with the ZBA about what qualifications they use for granting variances and just discussing, just having a discussion about it.
sure.
Great. Loop me in.
Mike, you discussed the front yard setback issue with parking too.
Yes, that's on the list. Yes. That's the other, there's a number of them on there that they wrote up on that also. Anything else we missed on that? So, Have a motion to grant,
Declare your intent. Declare your intent.
to declare our intent to be lead agency, thank you, for the CVS Pharmacy Stop and Shop Fueling Station Site Plan application. I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, we gave you some information. We'll work on the other information. We'll forward it to,
And then simultaneously, we should prepare our application then to the zoning board, so you'll let
Yeah.
them know it's coming, so, okay.
we'll definitely let them know it's coming.
Okay.
But, yeah, and we'll continue from there. But I think we gave you some of the ideas, some of the things you've heard before. Sure. But I think it's good to hear from the rest of the planning board members on it.
Do we need a
Yep.
referral for ZBA or not?
Do we do a referral, or? is-
We can do a referral
Or we
on
wait
it.
until they ask for it?
We can give them, I'm not sure we're ready to make a referral.
Okay.
I'm not sure you need to. They have to refer to you when they have a variance application. So, one way or the other, it's coming to you and go to them.
Yeah, it's gonna go, we're gonna, kind of just let them know about it, but we'll go from there. Okay.
George, you're good with the fact that there isn't a need for a formal referral from the board over to ZBA? That we can make the application because we have
Make
certain
the application,
non-compliant?
they'll have to refer to us.
Okay.
But as we coordinate lead agency, they'll be aware of what's going on.
Very good.
All right, one of you have to put your John Hancock in the middle. It's just basically, we do take notes also. We hope you take better notes than we take. But it gives us a rough idea of where we're
Yeah.
at on
Plus,
it.
I got the engineer's letter, so.
Yeah.
Very good. So it's not a car application.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
And just to make sure that we're,
My daughter puts things in front of me like that all the time. Very good. Okay.
Great.
Excellent.
okay, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
If you want me to take that down, I think it came from your package.
Yeah, I can.
So they could
Well,
petition to be
they usually get them the same time you get them. Okay? Thank you. When we get the applications in, we roll them out to the planning board members and then she has, she gets one and she gets some. Before I lose Lyle, we do have some extensions. We've tried to group them all into the same time period. We had a number of them this summer, so this is the 90-day walkthrough of asking for the extensions again. I think a couple of them hopefully will get off in the next 90 days. But we've gone over this thing, so does anybody have any questions, comments on any of them? I've added K&E site plan to the list. Even though they got the sign application going, they're still having the rest of the site plan approval that we
So
had given.
Katie's,
So K&E would be New Paltz Views, Pyramid, Vaccaro, Rappa, New Paltz Hampton Inn, and K&E site plan extensions for 90 days.
what's the status of the law case with Hampton Inn? I mean, are they still?
The
They're finished.
appellate division has made a determination, the planning board was correct.
Okay.
There has been no appeal from that. The time to appeal has expired, so
so.
At this point, I think the
No,
applicant
okay.
intends to move forward.
Applicant has been in with the building inspector on
Okay.
K&E already. Yeah, not K, on Hampton Inn, with plans and discussions for that.
Okay,
So I think everything
it's rolling.
is rolling on it. That's why I said it's hopefully permits and everything else begin shortly. Okay? So could I have a motion for grant extension for the 6 applicants?
Well, it's Candy, can you just review that again? It's-
K&E, he's moving, he's got the sign and the planner in there. He's in remediation to bring the site into compliance from the building inspector, and he's undergoing that. He's not doing anything on the inside, but he has outside work that he has a line to do. He has been in with the building inspector and on some of those things already, so there is discussion going on. He just, once he triggers, he gets a permit to go ahead, and then I can move it off our list. Okay?
Make a motion?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Here, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
One other quick question. You don't have to make a decision now, but think of it, because I'll ask you next month, next meeting. We generally schedule one meeting in December, and we have one scheduled for December 9th. Due to the nature of what we got going forward on it, I'm going to ask you to look at the calendars, and Kelly to look at the calendars to see if the 16th is a possibility for a meeting. I just think we'll be kind of bogged down in public hearing, so I'm not sure what we're going to accomplish, so.
I'm just gonna say I can't go, but maybe I can.
Save it and I give you 2 weeks, I'll ask for whether we formally do it or not at the next meeting. Okay? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody on board for the next meeting? It's on Wednesday.
Yep.
Because Veterans Day is on Monday, and the building's closed down again. And
Next meeting is on the 13th, Wednesday.
yes.
Okay.
We'll watch it home. We'll watch it home.
Yeah, I'm sure it's gonna drive fast and get there to it.
Yeah. But don't call back.
Okay. I think for those that aren't plugged in, give me a second too. Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any progress on fixing the Wi-Fi? It's like we had this open system for like a day. Transparency, glad to see it's happening.
Yeah, I don't trust email at all in here. It's in the system now. Okay, folks, last minute changes. I want to hold off on your discussion, but I just wanted to get a sense of the board had an opportunity to at least, I appreciate getting something at 3 o'clock in the morning, Dave. But I didn't read it right then and there.
Still Friday in Los Angeles, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You could always go that way on it. But we do have the final FEIS. I asked you that you take a look at it for the new areas that we had put in, and see if you have any comments or anything else that you'd like to bring up that you saw that you didn't have a chance to talk about. Before we get there, I should slow down a bit. George, you want to go over what we're proposing for a public hearing on your notice?
I've drafted a notice consistent with, generally consistent with a draft notice that was provided to us for a acceptance, notice of completion to be issued, and a public hearing to be scheduled on November 25th, I believe it is, the November meeting date. That's to allow some additional time for circulation of the document, the appendices, and some opportunity for public consideration of the entire document. And then tentatively, I presume that the board may need to go into the December meeting, so we included in the notice that the hearing would be continued to that date. That's at the board's discretion. If the board feels one meeting is required, we'll leave it in November. You always have the opportunity to extend it, continue it at a meeting to a scheduled meeting. But I think perhaps putting in those two dates would give the public confidence that there would be an opportunity to review it and to comment on the issues of greatest concern, I think, which are the fiscal impact, including the analysis that's been done by CGR, the soils information that has been provided, which is a little bit more extensive than was considered in the DIS, and the water and sewer infrastructure is proposed.
Okay. Dave worked at midnight, past midnight. We've gone through, and he's incorporated your comments. The document is very much a a red line version here. Dave, you want to just kind of scan of what you've done recently with it?
Recently, the most recent was, of course, back with a fiscal impact analysis. Mike put together a summary of that. George added to it. It incorporates some language about the process, the IDA, the findings of CGR. That information was also incorporated back in the back of the FEIS and the alternative sections where there's a discussion of the project. We did quite a bit with rewriting and adding to the soils part. It's been there for a while. We added some to the stormwater, just explaining more information. We put a piece in here rather recently that the remediation technique could be altered as long as it was equally, the method was equal at least to the method that's being proposed, in case there's something that comes up that's better. That would have to be approved by the town. We added information about the integrated pest management and how that would take place, and how the town would be involved in that. We responded to a comment about climate change. We added information about the water and sewer districts and the way that the In the future, the town might have a potential to take the water and sewer systems in as part of a new water and sewer district. We added some information about vernal pools, that they weren't a mitigation method, that they were shown on the plan, and I know there's some more discussion on that. Added some information about the wetlands and buffers. We added some information about how the land bank parking would be converted and what it would take to convert that, the approvals necessary. Added some information about the sewage treatment plant and the buffering. Added some more information about UCAT for the transit service.
Oh, I didn't see that. What was the intro? Hold on, I'll find it.
And the red line is page 92, and the red line runs
Oh,
a few
thank you.
pages beyond the other one. We added some information on energy. We added some more discussion about the ways that the land would be protected that's not going to be developed. Quite a bit more, but that's the, I guess, the most recent parts of it. Added some about the air monitoring and how that would be dealt with. Some information on the lease, on the leases, sublets. That they would have to be enrolled students in student housing, they'd have to be enrolled at SUNY, Paltz.
I haven't gotten to read that section, but does it explain how you can restrict it only to students who are enrolled at SUNY New Paltz under
Yeah.
fair housing law?
There was something in there, and see if I can find it.
The fair housing law does not protect, in my understanding, it does not protect students based on that status. There are various protected classes. Student is not one of them, and the landlord is representing what it is going to be able to do in terms of its lease arrangements, which my understanding is reflected in their agreement with the foundation.
But doesn't that discriminate against non-students?
But they're not
Discriminate-
protected
you-
class.
They're
you
non-
can- You
they're
can
not protected?
discriminate against anyone who isn't protected by statute or by the Constitution.
Uh-huh.
In the case of the Fair Housing Act, student status is not a protected classification.
And so it's non-student.
So, in the contrary, the negative of that is the non-student, yes.
They're not protected.
So they can't discriminate against perhaps a non-student from Iraq, but,
Not because of the student status.
Right.
Non-student status.
or any, really, well.
Not sure Iraq would be.
Well, that was a bad example, but the sort of people who are normally discriminated against, if they're students, they're okay.
You can discriminate against them because they're students, not because of any other.
But they're not being discriminated against.
No.
Everybody else is being discriminated
You can't,
against, who might want an apartment.
The averse, yes.
Yeah, you can't discriminate against, people normally discriminate against if they're non-students. You can say, we won't rent to you because you're a non-student, not
Okay.
because you're a member of a protected class.
Right.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess I see that. But if I wanted to rent a room there, I couldn't.
just
Unless you enroll.
You would just have to enroll.
I'd have to enroll.
You're not a protected class, and I'm even less of a protected class.
Yeah, I'm going to be extinct pretty soon. All right,
Okay?
thank you.
What I'd like to do, again, is accept it, but I want to go over, I guess, is comments back and forth with Dave and just try to put our arms around it and see where we put those issues that have been raised in it. So,
Okay. I've given overview of my comments.
any way you want to do it.
Okay, well, basically, I feel like, I'm sorry, guys, don't have a heart attack. That in working with Dave to try to edit the document, there's just some areas where working with the memos from Spider, ENCB memos, and the document, it's very difficult to kind of combine all those into one thing that makes sense when they have a lot of conflicting information. So basically, I have 5 areas: ball field, buffers, vernal pools, conservation easement, and herbicides. Super quick and easy.
Yeah.
So let's see, vernal pools. In the memos from the ENCB and from Spire, it discusses how the vernal pools aren't really that useful because there are really no amphibians who are going to be at those spots anyway. Maybe you can fill us in more, as a member of the ENCB, So there's a lot in the document about how the vernal pools are this great environmental mitigation, but then the memos from Spider and ENCB seem to be saying that they're not really doing much. That maybe the name should be changed to, what do we call it, retention?
Retention
Yeah,
basin.
Retention ponds.
Yeah, ponds and things. So, I mean, I wonder, I know it takes more time and drags things out, but if we could just have a kind of discussion with the applicants, environmental consultant, and with different interested parties like Spider and the ENCB, and us to kind of work out different language on that. Or, I don't know.
From 50,000 foot level
Yeah,
on review of the document.
doesn't really matter.
And again,
It's a point.
what I was getting at is, we're not looking at for vernal pools to
Here's why it matters to me.
go ahead. Yeah.
Because it discusses it in terms of this great environmental mitigation, and if it's not, it seems silly to have it in there.
We actually took that part of mitigation out of it. If it was mitigation, it would have to be done, they'd have to work
Yeah.
the way they were proposed. And talking with Doug Eldred of VME, they're certainly
They're
not
not.
wed to these at all.
Yeah.
They put them in because Spider thought they were a good idea at the time.
Yeah, well,
And I
what,
wish Spider and Martin had
Yeah.
really gotten together and hashed this thing out.
yeah. Well, what Spider says is that these areas can be used to expand buffers around the most sensitive or valuable natural areas, to extend eco-friendly educational trails or other environmentally appropriate uses. I mean, maybe that's something we could
See,
discuss.
The sense I've gotten is these things would be nice to have,
Yeah,
but they're not being provided to mitigate an impact
yeah,
so much as to enhance something which, the wetland areas that the site plan intends to protect anyway. So if you don't have them, you're not losing mitigation, you're losing an enhancement. And from the EIS standpoint, the idea is to identify the impact and the mitigation that's required to address that impact to the extent feasible. So if you don't have the impact in the first place, you don't have an obligation for mitigation. That's where I think the rub has come up with this, is it's being discussed in terms of mitigation, but it
but
isn't.
it's not, yeah.
And I recall we had discussion about that a few months back, suggesting that the applicant, Spider, and the board should come to an agreement as to if it is mitigation or not.
Yeah,
And if it isn't, we need to make sure that what is being shown on the plan is what we believe is necessary to perpetuate. So if they're going to put some planting there and it's intended to be vernal pool plantings,
yeah,
if the vernal pool doesn't work, planting doesn't need to be there, there is no need to continue to plant that stuff. Because typically, site plans have a requirement that if you show a planting, it has to be maintained in relatively thriving condition. So to have the applicant try to
Yeah,
make a
why?
vernal pool persist when it really isn't suitable for the site and it's not necessary is in no one's interest.
Well, I guess then I wonder if maybe Spider could tell us where we could extend buffers instead of the vernal pools. You know, something that would be a,
Well, if we kept those water spots, rather than call them vernal pools,
yeah,
we call them bioretention areas. We use the language that Spider says, like an enhanced language you just read, and put that in for what those things are for. Do we accomplish what we're looking for? Or am I still missing something?
This seems like it's becoming more of a site plan issue to me,
Yeah.
that we pick out what's really the best and
yeah.
specify that in the site plan, make that a condition of the site plan.
So I really want to take out the language of a vernal pool in the FEIS because
Well,
it's not used
take out the mitigation,
mitigation associated with it.
because it is in the
Which
mitigation.
that was taken out, actually.
Right.
I was almost wondering if not only were they not a mitigation, but they were actually a population sink, attracting creatures that were just going to get run over by cars or, you know, to areas that were totally unsuitable for them. But,
No trap.
well, there were a couple that were up pretty close to Route 32 in the entrance driveway. And, you know, that just, to me, suggests setting a turtle up for an unfortunate event.
It's
So,
like the full moon at the end of June or end of May when they're crossing South Ohioville Road. And
Memorial Day weekend,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
just have to cross the road, you know, it's just,
Could I just say, I think they were originally bioretention areas, original, is what we talked about them, and then, you know, after a lot of discussion back and forth with Spider, and, you know, how the thing kind of evolved, they became vernal pools, because he had interest in them, and if the board doesn't want them as vernal pools, we'll change on the site plan, and they can be, you know, dressed as that, they define these need to be changed to,
would they actually be part of the stormwater function then? Because isn't that what a bioretention
don't know
thing does?
specifically, but I don't think they were part of the stormwater and vernal pools, they wouldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't be, so,
No, that's a separate.
uh-huh.
They can be worked on through.
So Augusta's question is what should they be turned into that would be more useful?
Well,
And,
I think the real question is, do they now have a conservation value, and should that be maintained? If the answer is no, then the answer is no.
Yeah,
I think there's a, I like the term bioretention area and take a look at it from a site plan point of view. But we shouldn't try to create something that
yeah,
just won't work.
yeah.
I think what we
All right.
concluded on that one.
All right, the next thing, ball field. Both memos that I was reading discuss, the ENCB has a couple great paragraphs about the ball field, and Spider's note says, the ball field on the site plan occupies space that could be put to more appropriate uses and greater benefit as well. I know there's a requirement for recreation. The ENCB memo talks about how they feel that that has been met in other ways. I can probably call that up if you guys are interested in it, but thought it would be an interesting thing to discuss.
From a site plan point of view?
Oh, perhaps. I don't know. So
Well,
should we wait till we get to site plan to discuss that then?
I'm just, you know, what I'm looking at is it necessary? Are we having a ball field in for anything that has to do with the FEIS? Or can we come
Yeah.
back to that from a site plan point of view and decide,
I'm fine with that.
is that the right thing? But I'll just throw it out.
I know that there's some requirements there for recreation, and it kind of gets a little gray between passive and active, so there's so many square feet per bedroom, as I remember, for
I
RV.
think it's 500 foot per dwelling unit. And the building inspector has looked at the conceptual recreation plan, and believe she has determined that those are sufficient to meet the recreation requirements. Whether there would be an environmental issue with using a section that's been identified for recreation would be the point to address in the EIS. If it rises to the level of a significant impact, if it's a question of accommodating the environmental use or the environmental qualities and maintaining a recreation use of some form, that may not be a significant impact.
I mean, I'm fine with waiting till we get to site plan to discuss this more, if that, seems to make sense.
Okay.
So then the FEIS doesn't lock us into anything for later, but I mean, it's still
Well,
stuff
For the,
we can,
for the things that you've raised, we can discuss from a site plan point of view, how we want the I'll call it the ball field, if we think we got some added advantage. But to the extent that the ball field is used as, could be used or not used for any mitigation of any environmental impact, I
it's,
think
okay, gotcha.
Or if it would create an impact in and of itself.
in of itself it would create it.
But if not, if there's no information that
Gotcha.
indicates,
Then we'll discuss it later. Okay. So the ENCV memo talks a lot about the buffers, which I know we discussed before, but just for the, final time. That their idea is to just maintain the original 100-foot buffers. I'm just throwing things out there.
Yeah, no, I think, we've talked about the buffers before and the flexibility or lack thereof in creating it. The things that I came up with is that if we use a hard and fast rule for the buffers, then we may be protecting areas that don't need protection and missing areas that do need protection. So I always like the idea of giving some flexibility in creating the buffer around the points that we're talking about. Where I can, I will be flexible in the buffer. I think we we had a discussion on land bank parking, and to land bank parking is to create more of a buffer and not go into the buffer zone as best we can and as the places we can. So I think we've tried to maximize the buffers where we could, knowing to some consideration that we don't have 100 foot all the way around it on it. But I think we've acknowledged, and again, from this whole setup, we haven't really gotten a warm fuzzy on what you can do or can't do in a buffer, and we found DEC putting things in buffers that, that we never thought you could put in. So I think we need, from our perspective, at least some flexibility in design work around the buffers on it.
I would agree that we should have some flexibility, but I think we shouldn't be guided by the DEC.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, of all the agencies that needs all revision or lessons on the environment, it's the DEC. I mean, we're totally out of control.
The DOT is worse.
Okay.
We don't want to listen to them. I mean, we should look at our own wetlands law for guidance.
They just
which could be back. And if it is back,
Yeah.
the buffers then have to be, any encroachment upon the buffers would have to meet the requirements of that law,
Yes,
which is not something which you
but
could
it's
do.
also flexible. I mean, it can be.
It has
you
flexibility,
can-
but you have to go through a process. The planning board ultimately would have to determine a permit could be granted for an
Yeah.
encroachment, and there are standards in the
Exactly.
code for that.
Yeah, no, but we could pretend it's in effect and let that be our primary guidance.
That would be, I think, prudent for both you and the applicant, if that's consistent. Because
I think
there
so.
is no grandfathering provision that would apply to this applicant in the laws that's currently drafted.
So,
Okay, so,
from that, okay, so what, I guess, that, we think we need the flexibility in
Yeah.
finding the buffers. Moving from 100 feet, I mean, DEC does 100 feet on their 12-acre sites, and we're trying to do 100 feet on
yeah,
a tenth of an acre site. So I think that's why, I think that's in there for that flexibility of where the buffer makes sense. I think we've tried to maximize the buffers anywhere we can by removing
yeah,
and redesigning the system. But like George said, if the law comes into play, and then we'll have to go review every one of those and see what
yeah.
can do or don't. I mean, to do 100-foot around every one of those sites would be a major change in the site plan that we've worked on to get it into, to minimize its impact on the whole site to begin with. So,
Well, all right.
I know, I'm not giving you I mean, we probably have to go through and take a look at each one of them and see what we could do,
I mean,
where,
yeah,
I think the town's wetland consultant also really took a real good look at those early on to find out what, him and the applicant's consultant to try to figure out what the quality of the wetlands were. I think
yeah,
Yeah.
the best stuff, they really tried to protect with buffers, and there was some stuff that would classify as a wetland, but it was not great stuff, part of the old orchard.
yeah. All righty.
yeah, that's right, we did have to.
Yeah, yeah, you will. Okay, well, herbicides, I think Dave and I are kind of working on via email. Had a whole nice discussion about.
I saw that discussion. Would you fill me in on what the town is doing? The NPM?
Yeah. Yeah, what is it called? NPM, non-toxic pest management. Where did that go?
The town has a policy, and you have to find out how serious the policy is. Everybody says it's a policy for non-toxic herbicides or pesticides. And I
Well-
think it would be a better,
It's Ulster County Department of, sorry, Ulster County Legislature. Yeah, establishes, I'm sorry.
The Ulster County has
You'd
one,
have to
but
call it pest control rather than pesticide if it's non-toxic.
this was passed
Unless you
several
just
years ago by the
stamp on
town
it with your
board, and I'm
foot.
trying to find what's really in that law. I think it would make more sense if it was
Is it
the
something
towns, as
just
long as it
dealing
was
with
at
town
least-
property?
Yeah.
Yeah, this says it bans traditional herbicides and pesticides for landscape maintenance, but allows for granting of waivers to use in certain areas.
I think there's a link. That's what I'm just trying to get at. If the town has a policy out on the county, and then we should.
Yeah, it says the town of New Paltz. Oh no, I think that's what Spire's saying we should do. Oh, let me see. So, we'll figure it out.
I think we can specify in site plan which one is the best link on that. It should be the most restrictive if it's a county, but I know that the town did something here several years ago, and I've heard that they really follow it, but I haven't found the wording on it yet to make sure how strict it is.
I would just say that if you're going to impose conditions which are environmental in character, there needs to be a basis in the EIS to support that. So you want to be sure you identify the impact
Yes, sir.
and the means of mitigation.
So the extent that say for landscaping purposes, we should adopt either the county.
Well,
maybe-
if you have an impact that's related to the use of pesticides or herbicides, and there is a means that would mitigate that impact, and it's defined by either the state or the county code, town or county code, you could determine that be imposed as a mitigation measure. Presumably the applicant would agree with that. and you would then be able, whether or not the applicant agrees, post it as a condition. But the foundation has to be in the EIS because it's not part of your site plan.
Right.
So you can't just say, because we're doing site plan review, we're going to make.
This is something that we want to put in the FEIS,
Right.
not wait for site plan.
And that's the sort of thing I think Dave can work with Augusta to make sure it.
When I read that, I thought, yeah, I agree with you. I think that, you know, if we're using it in the town, and whatever it is, we should get.
I mean, I could put in there that it has to follow the requirements or abide by those regulations, whether it's the county or a more restrictive if it's the town. I think there's a way I
Equally,
can do
something
that.
that's equally protected.
Right.
Right. Right, yeah, I mean, I should
Dave, you
report.
were talking about a law of uniform application, not just for us, not just for our project. I mean, this is a law that would apply to everyone, correct?
The same standard would be applied to any other
Yeah.
similarly situated
That was
applicant.
right.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I think, yeah, if the CVS application got approval on it, we would impose that thing also on them from a landscaping point of
As long
view.
as the law is in place.
And the policy of what to do and how to do that. Anybody's doing that, I think we should broaden that out.
Okay, last thing.
Should that be actually, if it isn't already in the town code, put in the town code under site plan regulation?
No, it's not in the town code, it's policy.
It's a town
It's a policy,
It could be
it's a
adopted.
policy
It was adopted by the town board.
on the town property.
Right.
Oh, so it doesn't necessarily automatically apply to other places?
Right.
That are not on.
But we could, from
But
a
we
site plan,
can?
use, if the town is using a policy on their land, we think it's apropos to use it in other site plan. Eventually, we should put it in the code, I agree with you. Into the,
Well, I
zoning.
really appreciate not seeing, weed killer along the side of the road, and that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
but, you know,
Probably all the amphibians and turtles would appreciate not being poisoned by it too.
but I think there's,
Yeah?
yeah.
Only in the vernal pool, it's the only place we're gonna.
We have, if they have a policy that does it on town property,
Even
then
salt on a road damages a vernal pool.
I think we have an opportunity to expand that use into sites.
What's the name for the integrated pest management, IPM? Or
Yeah, but that's kind of, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
that's what Park Point is.
I think that's where.
Yeah, the
About the
Paredes did.
County law, the town law?
County law was,
County rule,
Local law
Oh,
number
the
4.
county road department
Also
uses
county
it, it's
legislation.
nice.
Legislation.
I sure do. NPM, non-toxic pest management.
Ulster County, yeah, NPN, local law number 4, established implementation of non-toxic pest management policy on all Ulster County owned and leased lands. Is to minimize, intent of the local is to minimize and limit the use of toxic materials for pest management. It bans traditional herbicides, pesticides for landscaping and maintenance, but allows for granting of waivers for the use of pesticides and herbicides in certain cases. So it doesn't lock you down, but and it does have an advisory committee to grant waivers on it. So
Yeah, it says, if the county health department declares a health emergency which could be remedied through use of herbicides or pesticides, what would that be? Poison, I still say, anyway. An exception will be granted.
all right, I think that's
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
think the provisions that are already in the FEIS discuss working with the landscaping and
that was one of the monitoring and putting in a
pesticide
landscaping
monitoring and
plan.
pest,
We do,
all
but
of
then
that.
there's that sentence at the end that says, we don't rule out using herbicides or pesticides, which to me is kind of like,
Yeah.
holy, it's kind of a little bit
Yeah.
loose.
But I think that's, granted waiver, we can use it, that's it. All right,
Okay, I have one last thing.
At
I
least
kind of
it's
feel like we
not-
dropped the ball on talking about a conservation easement, but correct me if I am wrong. What the ENCB points out is that the FEIS says, the granting of a conservation easement or similar legal instrument will create significant legal issues for the SUNY New Paltz Foundation. And their point is, meh.
So, don't we have lawyers
So
here?
I wonder if we could discuss that. They say, we have faith in the ability of legal professionals to navigate any supposedly insurmountable legal snag. We hope that the planning board and town council will have the fortitude to make legal protection a requirement for approval.
Yeah, makes sense.
I could go on.
Yeah,
I know what it says.
I'll drink to that.
Hey, get a bunch of lawyers in a room and try to hash out a,
Yeah, give them a half an hour and they'll work it out.
Pass this one off to you.
we'll pick on George as a legal entrepreneur.
Well, we've talked about this several times. There is an opinion from the Foundations Council that would present issues, and that is couched in terms of a gift. And I agree that if a foundation or any other entity gives a gift, there could be an issue. You can't just give away a corporate asset, whether you're not-for-profit or profit. You have to do it for a purpose, and it has to be a purpose related to your overall organizational purpose. In this case, the applicant that's before it, the project sponsor, is in a lease with the foundation for the use of land. The use of land for a specific project, and it's going to be compensated, the foundation will be compensated for the use of land by lease payments. I don't believe it's necessarily inconsistent that there be protections that determine what the use of land will be. Whether that needs to be a conservation easement is an issue that has some legal import. Conservation easements exist in 3 different flavors at least. There is a conservation easement that's adopted for tax purposes, where property owner places restrictions and receives a tax benefit in exchange. That, if that was happening here, that would not be prohibited by the letter from the Foundation's Council because there's a tax benefit. There are conservation easements which are really not the same creatures as for tax purposes. They're given when someone simply wants to protect property. Those can also be called restrictive easements, restrictive covenants. And then there are conservation easements that are required by local codes such as ours, which require in certain cases that when there is some form of development, like a cluster subdivision, that a conservation easement be given, which basically protects the land that's been the subject of the conservation, of the cluster subdivision, from being developed in a way that would destroy the advantage of the conservation of the cluster. The cluster says, we'll put it all over here, this will stay undeveloped. So if suddenly somebody comes along and starts subdividing and developing that open space, it is abrogating the basic purpose of the cluster approval. So in terms of protection, you can have open space which is simply not developed, or you can have open space areas which are being protected because of environmentally sensitive features. In the course of review, I've heard both types of concerns. There is a general concern that about the nature of the amount of development that's taking place here and how that relates to the issues, for example, that are being considered with the variances. So the variances are being granted to allow denser development, somewhat larger development, so that the development can be in essence clustered. So if other areas are being left open because this clustering is going on, there is an argument that there should be some protection to ensure these are not developed in the future, if they've already been counted once, in essence. And then there is the environmentally sensitive areas of the property that are of greater concern, and the applicant is represented, they're not being disturbed, and the board's concern is that that statement be true for the future. So the wooded areas, which are to the western side of the property, have been discussed between Spider and you as being areas which have some significant environmental characteristics, and they deserve to be protected. There is a letter in the record from one of the professors about the work that his students are doing in this area to study and evaluate, explaining why there are things which deserve protection there. A conservation easement in and of itself is not necessary to protect it. I think between the record that you establish with your review of what the value is there, there will be clearly a requirement that if any future use was proposed there, regardless of whether it's building, open space, recreation, that those environmentally sensitive aspects of the property be considered and the determination be made as to whether there is a further review required. So I think there are tools which you can use to effectively ensure that the impact is evaluated in the future. And if you would approve it now, the fact that it's being considered in the future is not so much the issue. If you would not approve it now, and then the applicant or someone else comes in 5 years from now and says, we want to put some more structures over there. The important thing is to have a clear record showing the significance of that area, the potential for an impact if it were to be developed, and a clear appreciation by the applicant and the board that that would require review under secret and a determination as to whether there are impacts which follow from it. And the concern would be something happening on the property without the opportunity for the board to approve it. I think in terms of your site plan conditions, you can have conditions on that approval which specify this is a non-disturbance area. And any change to the character of the property would require a modification of that condition in the future. And that will include whatever secret review is required. That will include looking at whether or not the proposed change will affect any environmentally sensitive aspects of the property. So I think that way you're protected against an impact taking place which you haven't studied or evaluated and determined to be either not significant or to be an impact which needs to be mitigated. And in the future, if mitigation is required, it's better to have a specific impact that you're mitigating than to try and hypothesize about or speculate what that potential impact might be. So I think the recommendation I would make overall is during the site plan process, we discuss with the applicant and the property owner a way to incorporate those specific restrictions in a way that protects the existing state of the property and defines what that state is going to be. So for instance, if we approve a site plan and it shows bio-retention basins or whatever, if for some reason it's necessary to change those would not in and of themselves necessarily require extensive review. If there were vernal pools that were necessary for mitigation and they were not working, that would require, I would believe, some extensive review. But again, that's something which needs to take place when the circumstances exist and you know what the possible remedies are. Right now, that information is not available. So there is no proposed use, but we know it's important. We know the board believes, the record shows that there are significant aspects of the property that do require some protection review if there's going to be any disturbance, and we know there's just other open spaces which the applicant has proposed to keep as open space. So whether or not there's a recreation field or a wetland, it's open space. The board's concern is, in some cases, what it is makes a difference, and that's where you want no disturbance in addition.
So just, if I can summarize, or
That was my
we
summary.
get back, refer back to it, in a site plan or approval, we can define the open space that we see existing on the site. And we can define the areas which we think are critical, and the reasons why we think they are critical to remain open space. And in that citing or approvals, we can define what would be required to do anything in these areas. Meaning basically that they're back before, at a minimum, back before the board, even if they want to put a shed up.
Yes.
But we can clearly define and change, we can define every area that we want to remain open space and the reasons why that space has to remain open. Either because it's a wetland, it's a buffer, it's a, one of the other reasons for it. But we could take each section on it, define what that section is, like the woodlands. We can define that as an area that would require special protection and cite some of the documentation that we have for it. I get back to, I think that gives me a better handle on it. I think if you look at the site plan itself, there really, from a building point of view or engineering point of view, there really aren't too many places you can go. We really chased them out of the uplands because of the wetlands associated with up there on it. But I think what George was saying is we can define it even tighter than that for that. And maybe even to the extent that we want the ball field there because we don't want the ball, we don't want the ball field. Whatever it turns out to be, we can leave it like that. And if they come back and say, look, they really need a ball field, then they'd have to come back here for site plan and tell us what they would do in lieu of that. But that's
Right.
the future down the road that we don't know what it is now.
Yes. And I think that gives you much better control than just saying conservation. A conservation easement really isn't the critical question for you. It's the question of what use would be allowed, whether there should be disturbance permitted. And once you define areas where disturbance is not proposed and not contemplated, and where there would be environmentally sensitive characteristics that would be affected by disturbance, I think those areas can be identified on the plan with a note that clearly indicates those require approval and environmental review.
And to the extent that we think some are better than others, we can make them more restrictive. And some of them may have some flexibility, or may not. We can ballpark that and define that as an approval. So we can make them all as restrictive if we want them to be. But I think that gives, from a planning board, authority and approval ratings, anything on that site has to come before us. And I think the more we document it for future boards is the reasons why the things are being restricted and the reasons we've seen and why we're restricting them. And to the extent that someone wants to override that, they need a pretty hard case to get over that. That's the way I
Depends
want.
on the planning board.
Or the audience too. And Article 78 too. Look, there's one planning board wrote up 3 pages of why we don't want any development in that area, and you ignored it. You didn't even cite it. So, but like I said, when you get the conservation easements terminology on it, whatever you want to call it, I want to restrict development in that open space. But anyway, means are out there on it. That's not the limit that we have, could look at other options of, heck, we could write it up tight, we could maybe even develop an agreement. Heaven forbid that we're restricting this open space and have a couple of signatures on it. I'll throw that out as a rock, but moan and groan in the background, but it's something that we might be able to work on it on top of that.
For what it's worth, conservation easements can be a rather clumsy vehicle for preservation because once they are put in place, they're very hard to change. And if something happens climatically, due to other circumstances that essentially cancels out the conservation value of the piece encumbered by the easement. The easement is intended as forever. And so it's just, it can cause, in a way, a lot of problems, and particularly if it is in a little tract of land that's surrounded by unsympathetic development, because you can be really protecting what is essentially a desert island.
True.
You have to be pretty careful
Well,
about
first
what
of
you
all-
put an easement on
Oh, okay.
for that kind of thing.
Easements can have conditions, and they can have conditions when they can be reviewed, and they have conditions saying as long as the area has conservation value. And all of that can be restricted. I mean, I'm sure that New Paltz will change climatically within the next 30 years. And you know, my guess is it'll become a rainforest. And so that clump of woods wouldn't do us any good. Okay, but,
Or it could be the seed for,
right.
I mean, the
Further.
point I was trying to make is conservation easement by itself is a term. There's no particular magic to it in terms of what it accomplishes. And in some cases, having that term apply may or may not be actually protecting the interest that you're interested in
Can
protecting.
we have one statement in the FEIS saying that in the site plan, we'll identify areas that have conservation values?
Yeah, that's
Mm,
good.
Okay. We have that,
Restricted development.
have that, and restricted development. Have that, right.
Great. Yeah, cool. Oh, good discussion.
Yeah, that was good. No, that's what you kind of want to do.
I just have a few comments, only 3 pages. But basically, this is stuff that Dave and I have talked about. I didn't have an
And he's still
opportunity.
talking to you?
We are, I haven't talked to him since 3 a.m. on Saturday. And I haven't, unfortunately, due to circumstances with our computer system today, I wasn't able to confirm it's been incorporated. But I did want to just provide the general outline and make sure. I've given Dave a copy, so I'm sure it will be incorporated. I'll give it to the board as well. Discusses the water supply, and one of the concerns there was cumulative impact. This relates why the water supply for this project will not have an impact in and of itself. There is action which would be required by the town as well as DEC to extend that water supply. That same logic applies to the sewer facility. If there was future development, that would require analysis under seeker, action by the town board. Town board would determine if it's in the public interest. So it will not cause something to happen in its current state. It may lay the framework for a future action to be considered by the town board and the other agencies with approval authority, but it will not cause that to happen.
Right.
I want to make sure that's reflected in the IS because of concerns that have been expressed about the cumulative impacts. And that also includes a small section which deals with the soil conditions and the proposed mitigation. I just want to clarify that, but I think it's consistent with the discussion. And there was, as Mike mentioned, there was a section which I contributed to on the fiscal impact, and I haven't had a chance to go over, but I'm sure it's been addressed by Dave. If this comes down to is, if there is a mistake, we can always correct it. But absent that, I think you have enough to go forward.
So I think we've tightened it up and had a good discussion on it. We do have things that are rolling to the site plan that we have to be cognizant of, and I think the opportunity to find where and when we want open space and the conditions associated with it is good from the board perspective of limiting that. And I don't think we're far apart on it, and I think we can get agreements on it. With that, I really would, based on a discussion tonight, and to the extent that Dave can incorporate this language in it. Does anybody have any other things that they wish to talk about on the FEIS?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. I'm not at all happy with the way that the arsenic soil is being treated. I don't think it just seems a real clumsy process, and as a result, we'll have a restricted residential use. Okay, that's all we're getting out of this whole. I mean, there will be restrictions. It's not a normal residential use that this whole area will have. It'll be a restricted use, and it'll be restricted use on gardening, like vegetable gardens won't be able to be planted there. And the whole town, the whole area is sort of shifting for produce your own food, change lawns into gardens and so on, into vegetable gardens. And I can see students being especially interested in following that. And I think we haven't given enough time to really consider bioremediation of the arsenic in the soil. Instead of, it just seems totally clumsy and even expensive to take the soil, bury it under 12 inches of topsoil, and then mark it and forever sort of have barriers there. It just seems like a very clumsy process. Bioremediation, I've looked at it briefly, works that plants can absorb arsenic from the soil. It's about a 60-day process. You plant those plants, 60 days they'll absorb most of the arsenic, and then you have clean soil. And you don't have to go through all those gyrations by moving the contaminated soil around, burying it, and keeping it there forever. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think we've taken a real good hard look at bioremediations. Just a sort of a quick look. I'm not an expert in this field, obviously, or I wouldn't be here. But just a quick look and a quick study showed me several articles that show, yes, it works. There's plants that will absorb arsenic. You plant them, 60 days later, the arsenic is gone from the soil. And
Do you have to plow everything up and turn it under and
No,
do
no,
all that
no,
to
you
plant
just-
these plants?
What do you do with the plants?
yeah,
What
you
plants
sell
are
them.
these?
I mean, there in the article, I've given the citation of the article to Dave, and he's forwarded them to the applicant, and I can find the.
Yeah, we did discuss this a couple months ago, I remember, because.
It's just seems like a much more straightforward process. I mean, I'm not just saying it because the article is called "Removal of Arsenic by Phytoremediation: A Study of 2 Plant Species." Okay, and if you want, let's see if it's. Okay, I don't have access to the internet right now.
Yeah, no.
No, you don't.
In this building.
Okay, so I can't tell you. Otherwise, I could tell you. And it just seems a much simpler way to go.
My concern with that, Peter, is I read the article, and it was a plant in northern India. I don't know how that would
Yeah,
adapt to our climate.
use it in the summer.
The other bioremediation methods that I saw, one was mushrooms that Augusta had. There was another one that I saw, it was bacteria, as I remember, that you planted in the soil. But they were really long-term. They were for greenfield sites. And this was surprising to see the 60-day uptake on that. I do have something in there that says if there's something better than the moving the soil and encapsulating it. That's the way it's done in this area. That's the way it's done in New York. Is you either bury it or you take it off site, take it to a hazardous landfill.
Even that would be preferable to burying it.
I don't know about
I'll give you some minutes.
You know, next to it.
that. I don't like landfills much.
But I just see, it just seems that we're not exploring possibilities that are less expensive and more efficient, more permanent.
If it's less expensive, I imagine the applicant would be pursuing.
Well, I mean,
Then it could
I'm
be-
saying is, you know, on the planning board of Newport, but if I were a stockholder of Wilmerite, I'd probably say the same thing. Why don't we look at things that make more sense?
I don't think, my guess is they wouldn't have a problem looking at it as long as it could do it in the time frame. You know, if
Well,
it's really
60 days.
If it's really 60 days, that might be considered, but
As long as you don't
whether
have
the
to
plant
put-
really can survive in this climate, I'm not sure.
I'm sure that from June to August, we have the same climate basically as India, northern India.
I think they would like to have a lot of dirt moved before June.
Well, but they'll save themselves a lot of bucks by waiting on it.
I'm just gonna say, one of the concerns I have is that the method that we're using now is an improved method by the Department of Health and by DEC.
Right.
The method that is suggested here is not approved by anybody. It's completely outside the.
Yeah, but if in
agreement.
60 days later there's no arsenic, you don't need approval
And that's gonna be proven how?
by taking soil samples.
I mean, right now, we have a method that's recognized, proven, treatment by
Right.
the Ulster County Health Department and the DEC. This method of bioremediation with this plant from
Right.
somewhere in India isn't, to my knowledge, approved.
Well, no, but let's assume it isn't. But you do it anyhow, even though it's not approved. Now you do, you measure the arsenic content in the soil, and you don't need approval for anything because there isn't any.
That's,
Taking kind of a gamble, though.
I seriously doubt that that's.
Well, it's a scientific paper that says, you know.
Yeah, okay.
So you don't need approval if you don't have arsenic.
But there's nothing in that article that is dispositive, just saying that you wouldn't have arsenic.
Well,
I don't know.
it's a study that's used that use those plants for 60 days, and it reduced the arsenic in the soil. It absorbed the arsenic in the plants. The plants absorbed all the arsenic. There was just a very small trace left. I mean, there's a table in there. If I had access to the internet, I could give you the exact milligrams per cubic centimeter or whatever,
Kilogram.
and I could give you the stats.
All I'm saying is, from a legal standpoint, I'd rather defend the record with the Ulster County Health Department and the New York State DEC behind me than defend the record with this article. That's simple.
Yeah.
That's what we're always, Darius and I are always worried about, defending the record.
Well, I mean, if you can look into it between now and site plan, I think it's a better,
Is that better method?
Or cheaper method.
cheaper would be better.
Well,
Cheaper, better method? No, it's all those things, you know, if there's a better method to plan the site, you know, we should be able to look into it and not be necessarily arguing exactly what's played out.
Right. I think we've identified what
Just to have the flexibility is good.
so you have flexibility. When they appear for you for site plan approval, you can inquire as to what the circumstances are of this remediation technique and if we'll be using it.
Well, I just think the long-term outcome would be much better. Because if you didn't have a restricted residential use, but an unrestricted residential use, where students could go out and plant their tomatoes and potatoes to their heart's content in that area, I think it would just be a much more valuable project.
could we, and again, I haven't off the top of my head, define in site plan where these restricted uses would be?
They are, and there's garden areas also shown in the site
So
plan.
the garden areas are not in restricted uses?
Right.
You can't have vegetable gardens.
Well, I'm just saying, wait a minute, I missed it. You can define where the restricted uses are. And there are other places where there are garden areas.
There are garden areas that are there, right.
I think that's what we, you know,
No, sure.
Not all of the site is contaminated.
No.
And the contaminated soils are being moved to specific portions of the site which are not supposed to be disturbed by planting, but that doesn't mean other
Okay.
areas can't.
Let me just quote, 6 NYCRR 375. In addition to the use of the site must include a prohibition on vegetable gardens on the site. That's in FEIS page 17.
That's
Toward the
in the
bottom.
areas of the cleanup.
The area of cleanup,
Oh.
not the
The
site.
berm area.
Because we have two community gardens planned and on the site plan.
It says on the site unless,
Maybe we need to clarify that language.
Why don't we put in some language that, where this,
What page are you on there?
17. It's page 16, toward the bottom, I'm sorry.
So maybe the applicant,
Second to the last paragraph.
the applicant can show the areas where vegetable gardens are proposed to be located and provide assurance that those are not
Okay.
contaminated.
On the site.
This says on the side, okay. So I thought it was kind of restrictive and get around that.
so I think what we're just trying to find is where this restricted residential use category would be on the site.
Okay.
Define it better. Because if you're looking at it and you don't know where it is on the site, then we haven't defined it correctly. All right, why don't we try that?
Just one general caveat, which is there are a lot of assumptions that are stated in the FEIS, and those assumptions we're relying upon those. So we need to make sure they're clear and that there is some mechanism for, in the event those don't prove out, for adjusting the conclusions if necessary.
Okay. Is there anything else,
Okay,
Peter?
Let me look. Give me a couple of minutes. Yeah, I'm not all that impressed with the specialized barriers that separates the contaminated soil from the topsoil. It lasts, it has a finite life, 10 years, 20 years or whatever. And then obviously nobody will know where the boundaries are. There are barriers right now, proposed barriers,
Right.
between the contaminated soil and the clean topsoil on top of that. Once that disappears, then, I'm not sure that people will know where those were.
It's going to be in the berm.
Yeah, they're under the berm.
So there'll
They're
be
on
a
the
physical
berm.
structure.
Yeah, but you don't know how far down.
12
you-
inches down.
Well, hopefully we're not doing anything on the
There
berms.
was something in there about a sign, actually, saying,
Yeah.
don't go beyond the barrier, blah, blah, blah. So,
Good luck.
yeah.
So the
Buried plastic almost never
Yeah.
degrades. You can't get rid of it.
the contaminated soil is going to be beneath the berm. The
Fabric.
geotextile will be on top of the contaminated soil. There'll be clean soil on top of that. But there'll be a physical structure that should indicate where the contamination areas are. And
Yeah, I don't think we're changing anything, we're basically saying, we put topsoil over the contaminated soil, we're putting them in the berm, we're not doing anything else to the berm. We gotta maintain the berm.
Just real quick, I think at that level, the restricted level of cleanup, I think it requires yearly monitoring and reporting by the DEC. So, to just to your concern, Peter,
Yeah.
as it deteriorates or whatever else, I would imagine it would show up in a yearly monitoring report and then be, required to be
You remediate again.
cleaned up or addressed. I don't want to suggest that this thing is just being capped and no one's going to ever see it again and we're not
Well, that's
taking
right.
care of
It's on
it.
your monitoring
but,
list?
we should also include that as the mitigation for
I just checked with the monitoring.
for the
thing.
monitoring, but as a
And,
mitigation.
DEC will monitor it on a yearly basis and report and action.
Sure about DEC monitoring?
a soil cleanup, it's not a DEC
So-
regulated
sorry.
site.
Okay.
All right.
We can make
Should I
it.
write this? No.
Put it in there.
What is the question?
It really is not, it is not an easy issue. The other thing too is that that geotech layer, to my knowledge, and Dave knows more than I do about it, but I do represent a lot of clients that do develop in former agricultural soils. I have not had a client that has used that geotech layer.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's extra. That's what they've posed is voluntarily imposed. I don't know, Dave, have you seen it with other people?
I have.
Yeah, I have not representing anyone that did it.
Well, what I'm gonna do, Peter, is, in those restricted sites,
Stop your shovel.
Yeah.
we'll do some, on the monitoring team, some
They didn't
soil
even
sampling
use
on
that when they built
on a-
Lenape
on a
School, did they?
periodic basis.
Yeah, and annually.
Yeah, whatever makes sense with the soil sample guy. He says if they only move so-and-so, or, but we'll drop a few soil samples on the monitoring program.
Let's just see.
Okay? Putting his specs back on. Moving down again.
The metals actually do degrade over time too.
Yeah,
They
Oh,
get a
okay.
long half-life, but they do degrade.
Okay, I think that's good. But obviously, I think the financial section still needs approval. There's a lot of old men's there.
did you read through it? We responded to it. I mean, there is the update has all the fiscal in. What I did, and I'll go over it quickly, it isn't that long. There were a lot of questions on it. And if I get you down to it,
Page 146 on the red line.
Page 146.
what George has done in the front of it is really go into detail of the IDA a little bit more. I mean, we had people coming in thinking we were giving them pilots, or we were approving pilots, or doing that, or the town was doing an approval of the pilot on it. So I think George was trying to explain in detail how that works, who it is, what it is, and the whole process, right?
Yes.
So a lot of that upfront, Brett, is really everything on the pilot. It doesn't get down to page 148, the bottom line 25. The obligation of the planning board as lead agency to ensure the EIS provides an adequate basis for all involved agencies to comply with their seeker obligations. Well, it's a problem of the Ulster County IDA to determine if the project meets its policies. So that's basically what we've said in the front of it. To that end, then, on page 149, we get into the details of the us going to CGR and going through a third-party review of the increased, revenues associated with and expenses on it. And so we took the bulk of it from the CGR report, updated the table with it for just the revenues on it, and went into a little bit more detail using the CGR report. Pretty close to it. I did say at the end that, and I usually, again, I'm not trying to pinpoint it down, but CGR estimates new economic spending between 1.2 and 2 million, 11 to 18 jobs created by the project. But I then go into the services and basically cite pretty much what CDR says. What I concluded on is that CJR said basically 0.8 FTE in the police department. They did an upper bound, and the increase in cost for services range from, just under 100,000 to 250. I thought that we put in here, and I felt that way, but in some of the discussion, the uniqueness of the police requirements, i.e. 1/3 of the calls are occurring between 11 p.m. and 3 p.m. in that 6-month period. 1/3 of them are happening at that one time. That the heavy requirements occurring into that thing, that it would tend to lean us towards the higher end of the spectrum on the requirements of additional police requirements. I mean, if we were spread out over the whole day, that's different. I think I'm trying to get striking on that between 11 p.m. clearly and 3 a.m. a third of the calls are made that we get.
And also that,
None are going on Monday night. I drive down there now. It's dead quiet. So it's really a concentrated time, and you can't staff it on an average number of people across the board.
no, that's good. But also, I think still in the assumption that the increase of the student population, that is the age between 18 and 24, are responsible for most calls. And that is really a very high increase, and that should be.
That's why
So we're getting toward the high end?
Yep.
Right, okay.
So total cost for emergency savings could be as high as $279,000 for all public service. We put in there, and again, I don't know any better than anybody else, but I put in a range of numbers from one to the other number. But again, there was a feeling from a uniqueness of those costs that we're talking between 1 and 2 full-time equivalents. I think I can't get better than that on estimating the cost.
Yeah, and I also think the other, not our consultant, their consultant also assumed that students would not be the university's not in session between July and August or something.
Yeah, I saw that, and the students are back.
The students are
back a weekend before the last weekend of the month.
Well, the students are there.
And
I mean, there's a summer session going on, and there are a lot of students coming into town just for the summer session.
So
It's not as crazy though, but yeah.
we're just trying to get a differential between July and August and September and October. Saying that we had this big influx on it, but really the students are back in August, so it's still not clear enough.
They're back in July too.
So for that part, we had, used the high end of the spectrum on it, going forward on that, and I think, we've covered, and that's basically what I got out of basically our discussions with the consultant last week, was the tendency to go along with some of those numbers on it. So that's what we put in on the economic on it. And again, it's not very much on it, but it is a lead-in to clearly define the role and responsibilities of the taxing jurisdictions, the planning board, and definitely the IDA on it. So I think we're in pretty good shape going there. Is there anything else?
159 and 160 were the key pages on that here.
Okay.
That's only down to 73% left. I should have brought the other computer, it dies a lot faster.
The meeting has to end.
Right now.
No, I didn't put that on mine, on this computer, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I said the last sentence I got, planning board believes that due to the
Got it on a flash drive.
uniqueness of
Yeah.
police requirements, heavy requirements, yeah, well, you can read mine too. Heavy requirements in the 11 to 3 p.m., 3 a.m., the use of the student population would be a better method.
Yeah.
Would be a more robust indicator of police force.
Yeah.
And that's what you were asking
Exactly.
for. Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that we want to pick up on? I would like to make a motion to accept, what is it? The FEIS as complete?
As complete, I would suggest you may leave authorization to the chairman to make any revisions that Dave, to review any revisions that Dave has to make to
The little things that we,
Direct comments.
the 2 pages of notes that we gave them today.
Well, sufficient to release to the public for a public hearing.
Yes.
And that does not mean that it's chiseled in stone, it just means that we think
That's
it's
why we're having
ready
the public.
to share, and then, you know, there will be polishing.
Yeah, and
And-
we can also, of course, polish. I mean, we're not buying this as is.
No, and to the extent that, when I was talking with George on this thing, to the extent that we have to be responsive to comments reserved, we have to answer them, okay? And the way we answer them is what we'll end up with in our finding statement. So that one could lead from the finding statement back through the whole process all the way to the draft environmental impact statement of how we handled each of the issues and been responsive to it,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay, now, I see eyebrows moving every now and then in the audience, and I'm just wondering, since we've done so much here to explain the DEIS to everybody, what happens if the applicant disagrees with the way we have framed and explained their application? Will that happen? And how does that get dealt with?
Well, back up, the FEIS, Final Environmental Impact Statement, is the planning board's determination on the issues that have been raised in the environmental assessment, any of the mitigation that's necessary, that we believe is necessary for those environmental issues that are needed. And this is our determination of the application.
Because, you know, it seemed to me that a lot of the things that we were adding were things that they could have put in the DEIS to begin with, to explain what they were doing. And so, you know,
The draft,
you know,
the draft is really the applicant's response to the environmental issues. The final is the planning board's response to the environmental issues. So they come from a different perspective or a different makeup on it. But I believe this is our determination of the issues that were raised. And our determination of the mitigation requirements on it, and our determination of what needs to be done going forward and to address the environmental issues. We have now done something extra, and that's why the eyebrows keep going up and down over there, is that we're opening up the public hearing to tackle those issues that weren't available at the time we did the public hearing on the DEIS. The environmental analysis is new. The water,
Fiscal analysis.
fiscal analysis, environmental analysis, excuse me. Fiscal analysis is new. The water and sewer information is new. It wasn't available at the time of the DEIS. The wells were being dug as we had the hearing. And the bid on what, soils, Dave?
Right, we had more soil testing.
More soil testing done. So these are the 4 new areas that the public has not seen before. So we're opening up the public hearing with the intent of getting feedback on those 4 areas. Clearly, we cannot tell the public what to talk about or not talk about. I would assume that a lot of times we'll get a number of the issues that we've already addressed that came out of the first public hearing. So, be that as it may, we'll receive that, but clearly it's the 4 areas that we're looking for comments on. We'll do I would like to see us do a response to those questions in those 4 areas that are raised, and then to come up with a finding statement based on that. Right now, if you did it, normally what you do is you run an FEIS, and the board, and then you would write your finding statement off that FEIS. But we told them we'd come back. We do more work on those areas. We've come back. We've done more work on it, and we're going to give it.
So will our public announcement actually direct people's attention to the new areas?
Does invite the
Okay,
specific sections and
Right.
the parts of that where there is new information,
excellent.
whether.
Let me just say why I'm a little hesitant to this, because I didn't, I was concentrating on other sections. I didn't really look at, I have some feelings on the fiscal, but I didn't really study that as much. I was kind of counting on Tim being here because he is specializing in the fiscal section and contributing and saying.
Yeah, and we haven't heard much from
We haven't-
Eileen either.
We haven't heard much from him. I'd rather wait one more time and give him a chance to.
Well, let me back up, and I think Tim has been intimately involved with the CGR report. We've had conference calls, we've had, Tim's asked a number of questions on it. Tim's gotten a lot of input into the CGR report, and that's come out on it. So he has seen all of this, and all the results, and in fact, Tim was the one who sent me back and stressed that he thought the need for the higher level that you thought on the student population ratio for the police cost should be in the fiscal report. So that's another reason why it's in there on it.
Okay.
Okay, so he's asked he asked a number of questions on it, and then every time we've gotten some, we've tried to funnel him into the mix on it to get that. And we did have a couple of times phone calls back and forth with CGR on it to get his questions answered on that. So I think he would be satisfied with the write-up on what's going on that, going forward on it, because it's moving in the direction that he wanted to go on it. So I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, it wasn't that we did the study and oh God, no, yeah. Even when he missed a phone call, we arranged another one for him. When Lynn and I were on the phone back and forth, but we got Tim back on the thing. Eileen is, I talked to Eileen. Eileen is definitely bogged down in work and home. Her availability to attend the meetings is, for the rest of this year, is iffy at best. She asked whether she should resign or stay on because she may have a change in modus operandi come January, but she didn't know what that status was. I asked her to stay on the board and to give us feedback that if she has time, she could review plans, send comments in. I mean, she gets to see like the plan we got today from CVS. If she saw things in that she wanted, that we should be cognizant about, she doesn't have to physically be here. She could send in the comments on it. So I've asked her to stay. She's intimately involved with Park Point, and I wanted to keep up to date on that too. That's things I say. But being in attendance at the meeting. And next meeting is on a Wednesday. Tim can't make Wednesday meetings, so I know that's going to be an issue come Wednesday. That's why I'd like to move forward with this. Now remember, the fiscal impact is one of the areas that we're putting out for public comment, so it's not that you're
Signing off on that.
signing off on that, okay? So I think, the study's out. That's the other thing we'll do in a minute. But I think he would be okay to the extent that we would add language to it is about the only thing to do. Well, we cite the report, and he's been intimately involved with the CGR report for it.
And that's incorporated as an appendix.
Yes.
Yes.
That's one.
So, based on that, I still would like to move forward, and because this is going to take prep work to get this to all the locations, to get it all complete, get the documentation out, and to give the public adequate time. We're going to make the motion for the November 20, whatever it is, meeting date for the public hearing. So it gives them, almost 30 days to go through this.
November 18th, I guess.
That's the third one.
Oh, sorry, fourth, yeah.
25th.
25th.
25th. And
So, okay.
November.
so, yeah, we don't meet on Christmas Day. I haven't gotten that one.
Well, sure.
We could. But, it's going to take a couple days to put this together. It's a massive document. It has to go to a lot of people, and it's really necessary to get it turned around. So that's why I'm pushing for acceptance as complete, the FEIS tonight.
So moved. With your various modifications.
Caveats.
Caveats on it?
Caveats.
Okay, any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. The other thing I would like to do is sign off on the CGR report as being complete. I think the last copy we got was October 16th. I could have said, and take off the draft, it's final, but we had him at the meeting. We got all the questions out. He came back, revised the report after our meeting, put in some additional language and a summary at the end. I think we have everything that we need from him. So I would believe that we have a complete report, and I just want to be able to say it's a final report from CGR.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Right. Mr. Mayor, Michael?
Let me just finish my motion.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So Dave can get back to Paul and tell him to take draft off. Well, finalize the date and, very clean, very good. Mike?
We had briefly mentioned before the 239M referral up to Dennis Doyle for site plan and subdivision. Now that we have a issued FEIS, I think it probably would be appropriate to send that to him. I don't know, George and Dave think, or what the board thinks, but
Had one of the planning board members ask me if I had a copy of the final FEIS the other day, so we're already thinking about it in Kingston.
Okay. Well, okay. It won't get to November's meeting, and neither will I, but it will probably get on the agenda for December. So can we make a motion to forward the Park Point subdivision site plan review for county review?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Any discussion?
I'm sorry.
We're just sending it up to county.
Is it the FAIS? What does it mean for site plan review?
It's site plan review you're sending. You're sending site plan review to county.
The
Nope, nope.
239 referral includes the site plan and the EIS.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, well, the whole, right, but that's, I mean, it's gone, it's not gonna be anything new, but you gotta go through the
Okay.
formality on it, so. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll send it to county.
Just
Well,
want-
like I said, it will be the December meeting.
Just to clarify, the public hearing will be opened on the 25th and continue to the 9th, December 9th.
Yes. Oh, we'll make well, we should make that motion.
We should, but
Yeah. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on the Park Point project as defined in George's public hearing notice, to be opened on,
November 25th will continue to
December 9th.
December 9th.
And that would include
George,
the,
And it is a continuation, right, of the lot line revision.
I was just going to say, we're continuing also the lot line public hearing.
Yes, that's in
On
there
those
too, the
days.
subdivision public hearing? Yes.
Yes.
That motion?
Thank you, Augusta.
Second.
Thank you, Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mike, when we distribute this monster, I'm just gonna send the FEIS and appendices, expecting that everybody that gets this has already got the DEIS. We don't want to reprint that, do we?
No.
Good.
So will
It's
it,
online.
will it be like the red line version so they can tell what's new, or would that be too complicated?
Well, the FEIS is going to be new.
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
new.
I know. Well,
It's-
okay, yeah, so it's all new.
I don't think you
Yeah.
want to show the
Yeah, it's too much.
course of events.
Yeah, the DEIS is part of it.
But again, what the applicant wrote up for the FEIS is immaterial.
Yeah. All right,
So
great, it's just, it is what it is.
you can keep the red line. And if somebody says, well, what changed? Well, you haven't seen it yet, so
Yeah.
nothing's changed.
Yeah, good point, it's just for us, yeah.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Okay. I thank you. I think we're finished for tonight. Motion to adjourn?
You want to do it, Pete?
No, you're going.
I've made lots of motions today. Go on, do it.
I don't want to adjourn.
So moved.
3 a.m.
Thank you for the
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
So Mike, you'll work with Dave. Dave will work to clean it up. Well, Dave, you got me, just call or we can get together anytime you want, except 3 a.m. in the morning.
I recovered Saturday, took all day.